introduction. I actually hate, you guys can sit, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. I hate introductions. I got shell-shocked at an introduction in 1991 and I'm still not over it. Right after college, I was signed to a record label called Delicious Vinyl Records. And Delicious Vinyl had two huge acts at the time. One was a guy named Tone Loc. Some of you might remember Tone Loc, Wild Thing, Funky Tone. And the other was a guy named Young MC who won a Grammy for his song called Bust a Move. I was like the next artist signed to Delicious Vinyl. And before my album came out, I got a call from the owner of the record company who told me they're having this huge concert in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome, where I live now in Atlanta, and they were busting in 36,000 inner city kids from all over the state of Georgia for this concert that they coined the Increase the Peace concert, because they were going to have black artists and white artists come together in this community bonding event that they called Increase the Peace. The day before the concert, Vanilla Ice canceled, and they needed a white rapper. They volunteered me to be the white act. So I get to the Georgia Dome, and as soon as I get there, I recognize immediately, like, the place is unruly. There's fist fights in the crowd, like big fist fights. And they're putting house lights on to control the audience, and police are everywhere. And the kids are booing every single act that came on stage. They're booing them off stage. So the first guy up was LL Cool J in his prime. They boo LL Cool J off the stage. I'm sitting over here in the green room, about to go on next to sing my song called Shake It Like a White Girl. So I called my mother, 21 years old. I called my mother, I'm like, Mom, I got a really big problem, man. They're booing LL and I'm on next. And she said, sweetie, just be yourself and they're gonna love you. It doesn't work like that, Mom. So the MC gets up, he's like, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from California, give it up for my main man, Jesse James, which was my stage name. Don't Google it. Don't Google that. So I'm about to come on, the record label gave me some t-shirts, so I grabbed a couple of t-shirts, and as I'm coming on, I'm looking at the kids in the front row, and they're pissed off that I'm even invited to this thing, man. But I got these t-shirts. So I'm like, does this section over here want some free t-shirts? The kids go crazy, I threw them out. This section over here, you want some free t-shirts? They went nuts, threw them out. Middle section, back there, you want some t-shirts? They went crazy, I threw them out. I said, thank you very much, Salt and Pepper's up next. I got the fuck out of here. Never let them boo you is the first rule of business. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. First of all, when I say guys, it's guys and girls. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it. I wanted to give you a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur. It was very unconventional, unorthodox works. I wanted to share some of my journey with you guys, and hopefully there'll be some nuggets that everybody here can apply to your own personal journey in sales, home life, work, whatever, and then spend a little bit of time talking about a Navy SEAL that came to live with myself and my family for 30 days. A guy coined the toughest man on the planet for a reason, and the life lessons I learned from him and how I apply them to all the buckets of my life. Cool? Cool. All right, a little bit about me. I went to American University in Washington, D.C. Anybody? Nobody? Guys are a whole lot smarter than me. Well, the tuition at American University today is $40,000 a year. So for $160,000 of my parents' hard-earned money, I can honestly say, I only remember one thing. I call it the $160,000 lesson. So my senior year of college, I was at a crossroads. I was either going to go into the music business, which I loved, or I was going to sell a product called Aunt Franny's Brownies. I had a roommate in college that had an Aunt Franny, and every month she sent us a shipment of brownies. I don't know what she put in these brownies. They made everybody happy. It was like, Aunt Franny, I can market these brownies, man. So for my advertising class senior year, for our final exam, everybody had to create a fictitious brand from scratch. Soup to nuts, slogan, billboard, packaging, jingle, which I was good at. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna use this class as my R&D department. If they like Aunt Franny's brownies, I'm going into the brownie business. So the way the final exam was set up, there were 100 kids in the class, a lot smaller than this, and everybody had handed in their campaign. But 5 people were going to get picked to do an oral presentation, a State of the Union, for 30 minutes of the industry they were going into in front of the whole classroom. Man, I'm a senior in college. There's a 5% chance I'm going to, like, nobody prepared for the oral presentation. You didn't want to get picked. So we go into the classroom and the professor says, I'm going to do this the democratic way. Everybody write down your name on a piece of paper and I'll pass around a hat and I'll pick the 5 names of the people that are going to get selected. Sitting to my right in the classroom was a guy named Ronnie Cohn. Ronnie Cohn was a professional jackass. Ronnie Cohn bullied half of the class for 4 years of college. So when the professor took out the hat and went around the room for the names, I took 20 pieces of paper and I wrote Ronnie Cohn's name down and I stuffed them into the hat. Jackass. The professor gets all the names, picks out the first name, true story. The first name, sure enough, that comes out, Jesse Itzler, the jackass, did the same thing. Such an asshole. So I get up there to give my pitch in front of the professor in the class, unprepared, and 30 seconds in, for $160,000 of my parents' hard-earned money, the professor says, stop. He said, son, I want to know, what is your point of differentiation? And I was like, what? He's like, what makes your brownie different than all the other brownies? And I'm like, well, I'm gluten-free if you want me to be. I'm moist and delicious. I'm home-baked. I got shiny packaging. He said, no. He said, son, there's 1,000 brownies that come out every year, substituted for a financial advisor, advertising executive, restaurateur, whatever you do, there's 1,000 of you trying to be better than you that come out every year. He said, if you want to come out and be a brownie, you better ask yourself, what makes you a different brownie? Sit down. Whoa. So I sat down in my chair and started, and that's been a really big thing for me as an entrepreneur. I've constantly, that lesson resonated with me. I'm always asking myself, like, how can I do things differently, and what makes me different, and what makes my product different? And I said to myself in that moment, man, I have a built-in point of differentiation. I'm a white guy that wants to rap, and it's the late 80s. Like, there's no one else doing it. I'm going into the music business. So at that point in my life, I'd never been in a studio. I don't play an instrument. I had no connections. I'm not a great singer, which is not a great formula. In fact, the only way that I could make a demo was to take an instrumental on a CD, the instrumental portion, put it in my CD player. While the music was playing, go over to my answering machine, hit record, and leave a rap. And that was my demo. And I sent that demo to every record company in New York that I could find and got no responses. So I rejigged my calendar senior year of college, so I had no classes on Friday. I took every Friday off, and every Friday I took the Greyhound bus 5 hours from Washington, D.C. to New York City, and I would sit in the lobby of every record company, one different one a week, and I would hand whoever came out of that door a copy of my cassette with my dorm room phone number, and got no responses. So I realized with no connections, the only way that I could possibly get discovered was to drive traffic to my answering machine. So I started leaving raps on my answering machine and calling up music executives and leaving my number, hoping someone would call me. And one day I got a call from a producer who heard my message and said, you know what, man, there's something here, but we got to professionalize this thing. I just got a job in New York City working in a studio. The last session ends at 2 a.m. The next session doesn't start till 7 a.m. I clean the studio in those off hours. If you can come to New York City, man, I'll sneak into the studio and we can record a demo. So I moved to New York City and I took a job as a kiddie pool attendant, because that was the only job that allowed me to ride my bike every single day, 19 miles from Roslyn, Long Island, where I'm from, to Corona, Queens, to the studio, to get back in time, 19 miles to get to the kiddie pool so I could make some money. So one day I'm riding my bike. We got any New Yorkers here? Yeah! Okay, if you ever saw anybody on the LIE at 1 a.m. riding a bike, hello. One day I ride my bike, I get to the studio, and sitting on the mix board is a cassette. And it's a cassette that changed the trajectory of my life. So the cassette was by a Brooklyn-born hip-hop artist named Dana Dane. Doesn't matter if you know who Dana was or not, but Dana was one of my favorite artists, big artist. His first album was a big hit. Nobody heard his second album because he just finished recording it the session before and accidentally left it on the mix board. So I asked the engineer if I could borrow the cassette and listen to it, and I give it back. He says, sure. I take the cassette. 2 days later, I'm flying out to LA. I'm on the plane listening to it on my Sony Walkman. And I read in a magazine that the owner of Delicious Vinyl Records, Tone Loc, Young MC, this amazing independent label, the owner's favorite artist is Dana Dane. So when I land, I cold call the label. And that's a theme in my life. As an entrepreneur, salesman, whatever you do, man, you got to create your own luck. Luck doesn't happen on the couch watching the Kardashians. Luck happens when you put yourself in a position where luck can find you. I'll stand in front of a door till someone comes out that I want to meet. I'll track them down. I'll find someone that knows that person. I cold call Delicious Vinyl. I get all the way up to the CEO's assistant. I said, hey, I'm a friend of Dana's. I know Mike likes Dana. There's an old saying by Harry Truman. If you can't convince him, confuse him. Man, the secretary had no idea what the hell I'm talking about. She comes on, puts me on hold, comes back a minute later. She goes, Dana, Mike is so excited to meet with you. If you could be here at 2 o'clock, Mike would love to buy you lunch. Man, Dana will be there at 2 o'clock. Dana's a black guy from Brooklyn with gold teeth. 2 o'clock comes. I buzz myself in. Hey, I'm here to say, come on in, Dana. They whisk me in. All these gold records in Mike's office. I'm sitting in a chair waiting for Mike Ross to walk in, and in he comes. And he looks at me and he goes, who in the world are you? I said, I'm Jesse. I work with Dana. Sort of. He said, you work with Dana? Well, what do you do? I said, I rap. And I was really insulted because he kind of laughed in my face. He goes, that's impossible. I said, no. I said, well, while we wait for Dana, do you mind if I put my demo in? He goes, sure. I go, great, because we're going to be waiting a really long time. He's somewhere in Brooklyn. Doesn't know I exist. So I put my cassette in, and 30 seconds in, he says, stop. And he says the 4 words that every struggling artist wants to hear. Who is your lawyer? I got a record deal. But I didn't have a lawyer. I had a dad. My dad owned a plumbing supply house in Mineola, Long Island. So I was like, my dad's my lawyer. He goes, your dad's your lawyer? I go, yeah. He goes, I'll set everything up with your father. So I leave the office and I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, it's your son. It's your son. I got a record deal, man. I got a record deal. But don't screw it up, because my father's from Brooklyn. And he could be like, take advantage of my son. I know you. I said, all I want you to do when they call, the only thing I want you to say is please fax all the documents to my assistant. My father says, I don't have an assistant. And I'm like, yes you do, Mom. They faxed all the documents to my mother, and I signed them sight unseen, which is a big mistake. But then I made a bigger mistake. I took my foot off the gas pedal. I didn't reset my goal. As an entrepreneur, as a business person, when you hit a goal, the way you become great is you check the box and you move on. You think, what's the next goal? What's the next thing I can go after? How do I build my resume? How do I create this momentum? You check the box and move on. I took my foot off the gas pedal. Got a record deal. And I didn't get picked up for a second album. I got dropped from the label. So I moved back to New York City with 2 things on my resume. Kiddie pool attendant, rapper. That's not going to get you on stage in Vegas. But my wife always says that you find your true purpose at the intersection of these 3 things. What it is you love to do, what you're good at, and providing a product or service that helps people. Man, if you can figure out what it is you like to do, you're good at it, and you provide a service that helps people, you've really found your purpose. I love music, I love sports, so I decided to marry those 2 things together. I wrote a theme song for the New York Knicks. The Knicks paid me $4,000 for the song. By the time I paid the studio, the engineer, the lawyer that I now had, the drummer, the producer, it cost me $4,800 to do the song. Is that a good business model? Wrong. It's a fucking amazing business model. Because when you're starting out in business, the #1 thing you have to do is build a story. People buy stories. They buy momentum more than they buy products. You are the business plan. Right? You are the business plan. I would have paid the Knicks $5,000 to let me write their song. Now I had a story, and every team that came into Madison Square Garden was like, why don't we have a song like that? And I said, man, that's how my brownie is different. Everybody's trying to get into sport, into the radio and sell their records and Tower Records. Nobody's writing sports songs. So I set up a company and started writing theme songs for professional sports teams. And I sold that company to a public company called SFX. The owner of SFX had a timeshare on a private jet. And he invited my partner and myself as guests onto a private jet. 28 years old. And when I walked onto the private jet, it was like that scene in The Wizard of Oz when everything goes from black and white to color. I was like, people fly like this? I want to fly like this. And by the time we landed, my partner and I were like, let's start a private jet company so we can fly privately. Definitely. Except we had no airplanes. But we had an idea. And our idea was so simple. What if we could provide people with all the benefits of flying privately with none of the hassles? They had planes available on short notice, take you anywhere you want to go, you don't take your shoes off, and we handle all the pilots, scheduling, maintenance, and all that. And what if we could make it somewhat affordable and work like a debit card? You prepay for 25 hours of flight time, you fly 2 hours, you got 23 hours left. We called that idea Marquee Jet. As entrepreneurs, business folks, you never know when you get an idea. When I was a kiddie pool attendant, man, I never thought I'd have a private jet company. But when you get that idea, and you know that that idea in your gut is right, you go with it. Our idea was called Marquee Jet. So we pitched this on a PowerPoint presentation to the 800-pound gorilla, NetJets, owned by Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. 650 airplanes. And we go in with this PowerPoint to Rich Santulli, the CEO. We pitch our idea, and 12 minutes into the meeting, 12 minutes into the meeting, this is a direct quote, and it really pissed me off. He said, stop. Oh, did this bother me? This is exactly what he said. He said, if you think I'm giving 2 kids who probably didn't break 1,000 on their SATs, which really pissed me. I got a 980. Convinced myself I'd broken 1,000. He goes, that'll never happen. This meeting's over. And he threw us out. And as we're walking out, the president comes up and goes, man, that was unbelievable. Unbelievable, man. We got thrown out in 12 minutes. He goes, Rich Santulli doesn't give anybody 12 minutes. There's something here, but you got to bring this thing to life. And we realized that we could never come back a week later. We set up a meeting a week later and do a PowerPoint presentation. Santulli sees 1,000 PowerPoints every week that we had to figure out what made our brownie different in the pitch. So we brought in our own focus group. We set up a table by the boardroom table, and one by one, by our table, we had 8 people come in. We had Carl Banks from the New York Giants, Run from Run DMC, a powerful female real estate mogul, and one by one, they stood up and they said they would never buy a fraction what NetJet was selling, but they would buy a jet card if there was a jet card available. Santulli in the meeting said, man, if you guys put up your own money, I'll give you a shot. A year later, we were bigger than NetJets. We did $5 billion in sales, and we sold that company to Warren Buffett's NetJets. No more kiddie pool attendant. The first thing you do when you start a company or anything is you have to build credibility. So we realized that the easiest way for us to build credibility was to sign up big name people, because if I was going to sell this gentleman time on one of our planes, he said, well, who flies with you? And I said, oh, my father, my next door neighbor. He'd be like, what? But if I was like, Bill Clinton flies with us, Oprah Winfrey flies with us, LeBron James flies with us, I'd be like, wow, they must have vetted this thing. Like, this is real. So I was in charge of the entertainment vertical trying to sign up big name stars. And one day I'm going to my office in New York City. I was 35 years old. I'm taking a taxi cab. I only wore shorts until I was 35. So I'm in shorts in the cab and I get a ding on my device. I look at my device. If I get a ding on my device, that means we have a customer. Like, that's like we won the Super Bowl. Someone's flying with us. I'm like, what? And I look down and it says that Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez, and Matt Damon are taking a demo flight to try our product from LA to the Sundance Film Festival. I said, Mr. Cab Driver, take me to LaGuardia. I go right to LaGuardia with no luggage, in my shorts, get a Delta flight all the way to LAX, go over to the private terminal, and as it turns out, they got what's called a scheduling upgrade, by luck. They got upgraded to what's called the Boeing Business Jet. The Boeing Business Jet is a $55 million airplane. It's like Air Force One. It's got a bedroom, and it's crazy. And I go over and I see Jennifer Lopez, and I take out my card, and I said, Miss Lopez, I'm Jesse Itzler. I'm the co-founder of Marquee Jet. We got you this upgrade today, sort of. She looks at me and she goes, how old are you? I said, well, ma'am, I'm 28, 29 years old. She said, you're 29 years old and you own this airplane? Warren Buffett owns the airplane. So I looked at her dead in the eye and I said, yes, I do. She said, how many of these airplanes do you have in the fleet? I said, well, Miss Lopez, we have 650 of these airplanes in the fleet. She comes a little closer. She says, you own 650 of these airplanes? Man, I looked her dead in the eye and I said, yes, I do. In fact, I'm going to Sundance Film Festival too. I'm just going to jump up with the crew, and if you guys need anything, let me know. So we get up to 41,000 feet. I got to close them. This is the entire entertainment vertical in the cabin. So I get up and I start talking to Matt Damon, and Matt says to me a couple of minutes, he says, man, Jesse, you know, you seem like a pretty cool guy, man. If you're not doing anything tonight, and I'm like, doing anything tonight? I don't even have a hotel room. Why don't you come to our intimate launch of our Project Greenlight event tonight? It's going to be a small, intimate affair. We'd love to have you if you're not doing anything. I'm like, I'll cancel what I have, and I'll come meet you guys. So we land the airplane, and they go in their limos, whatever. I grab a little taxi once they're out of visibility. I go 30 miles to a Motel 6, buy some clothes that look pretty similar to what I'm wearing today, and I head over to the intimate affair. Well, Matt, you're wrong. It's not an intimate affair. There's 4,000 people trying to go through one guy with a clipboard to get in. And I'm like, man, I'm never going to go in. But I recognize in that moment, it was like that Eminem moment, I'll never get another chance. You know when we get that opportunity for a customer or a client, you just got to go, you got to go introduce yourself, shake your hand. That was this moment for me. I had to get into that damn door. There was no way I was not getting through the door. So I go through every crowd, excuse me, I go up to the doorman, take out my ID, I said, excuse me, sir, I'm Jesse Itzler. He verifies it. I said, I'm on Matt and Ben's advanced scout team. They sent me down here because they're not coming until I look at the VIP room and tell them, call them and tell them it's perfectly set up the way they want it. They're waiting in the hotel. The guy's like, okay. And in I go. It's a mismatch, man. New York versus Salt Lake. So I come in. It's a mismatch. No disrespect anywhere from Salt Lake. I come in, and I go to the VIP section. Clooney's got a table, and Pitt's got a table. Do you guys remember Pauly Shore by any chance? Yeah. Pauly Shore's got a table next to Matt Damon. He's got all these names or whatever, so I take out a pen, and I write Itzler, and I pull up a seat. If you don't have a seat at the table, make one. I'm sitting over here next to Matt comes in, I'm shoulder to shoulder with him, squeezed in like at the table. We start talking, but the music's too loud. I can't close him, I can't pitch him. So I said, Matt, man, when are you going back to LA? He goes, I'm going back on Sunday. I'm like, so am I. Why don't you fly with me? He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'll set it up with your assistant. So I leave and I call my partner. I said, man, he's like, did you close them? I'm like, no. I need a G4. He's like, you need a G4 for what? I'm like, I got to fly everybody back so I can close them on the plane. He's like, well, what if you don't close them? And we go through this whole thing. He's like, look, a G4, that's our entire marketing budget for the year. And with all this pressure he puts on me, we decided it's the right thing to do. He gives me an airplane with a ton of guilt and pressure. Listen, my friend Tim Grover always says, as an entrepreneur, pressure's a privilege. Pressure's a privilege. We play for pressure. If you guys don't have enough pressure on your quotas or what you think you can do, something's wrong. Because behind pressure, amazing things happen. It's good to put some pressure on. I wanted that pressure. And by the time we landed that airplane, all three of them were signed up. And that was the start of a company that went on to do $5 billion in sales. During my journey at Marquis Jet, I decided I want to raise money for charity. But I didn't want to have a golf outing, man. All my friends were having golf outings, or they were honoring somebody and having them send out an email to raise money. I don't want to do any of that. I wanted my brownie to be a little bit different. So I decided that I was going to run 100 miles. I signed up for the USA National Ultra Marathon Championship to run 100 miles in 24 hours. And I gave myself 90 days to train. Every single training manual that I Googled and read about was a 12-month program. Here's one key thing as an entrepreneur. Speed up the process. Speed up the process. Whatever you guys are doing, find a way to speed up the process. Because I was like, man, if I could do this in 90 days and everybody else is taking a year to do it, I'm going to have twice as many races as them. I'm going to have 4 times as many experiences as them. I'm always looking for ways that I can speed it up. Who's the expert? What seminar do I have to go to? Who's my lawyer that has the connection? How do I speed it all up? And I gave myself 90 days. And when I did that, I did a lot of research around hydration and nutrition. If you're going to run 100 miles, what do you eat? What do you drink? And everything pointed to coconut water. And I became the human guinea pig for coconut water. And I finished the race in 22 hours and 30 minutes. It put me in a wheelchair for 4 days. But I finished the race. Yup. Raised a lot of money for charity. And when I was done, I was like, man, when people discover the benefit of coconut water, it's going to be the next big thing in beverage. And I spent a year traveling the globe trying to figure out how to import coconut water. And I realized that, like Santulli was right. I did get a 980 on my SAT. I could not figure that shit out. Importing coconut, but I knew I could market it. So I partnered with a company called Zico, Z-I-C-O. They were doing $3 million in sales. And 2 years later, we sold that company to Coca-Cola. My wife is an entrepreneur. She owns a company called Spank. She started with $5,000 in savings. And my business career kind of went to a highlight for me when 3 years ago, my wife and I became part of the Atlanta Hawks ownership group. And throughout my 25-year journey as an entrepreneur in business, there have been 2 themes that I really want to share with everybody. The first one is I had no prior experience in anything that I did. I had no prior experience. And for a lot of people, that could be a deterrent. It could be a dream crusher. Like, I always wanted to open a restaurant, but I don't know how to do that. And I always wanted to write a book, but when you get started or whatever. But for me, it was the greatest blessing. Because it guaranteed that everything that I did in my life would have different results than everybody else. It guaranteed that my brownie would be different. I always say to people in my office, if nobody taught you how to do your job, how would you do it? Rip up the playbook, rip up the manual. Every company is using the same manual that you're doing. Innovation comes when you rip up the playbook. And you said, man, how could I do it? How could I be a better, how could I get this customer? How could I be a better, how could I become the guy when there's so many people that want to be the guy? How do I get that person's money? How do I become the advisor? What do I do differently? The second thing is when I started out in business, man, I had no time to be scared. I was too young. I guarantee you, with 100% certainty, every single person in this room will come face to face with a wall of fear in your journey. You have a decision. Do I turn around and be like, man, I'm not going near that wall? Or do I go through that wall, above that wall, or I figure out how to go around that wall? But on the other side of that wall of fear is a pot of gold, man. That's where the gold is. Now, I don't like to, the most liberating gift that you can give yourselves is to get over the fear of being embarrassed. Now, I don't like to be embarrassed. None of us like to be embarrassed, but I'm not scared of it. But it wasn't always like that for me. When I was in college, I liked this girl in a classroom the size of this. She didn't even know I was in the classroom, but for 6 months, I had a full-blown relationship with her in my head. And because our relationship was going so well, I decided to invite her to my formal. But I was so scared that she would say no, I had to have my roommate call her and say he was me. I was so scared of the rejection. Fast forward 20 years later. I like this girl. She's the CEO. She's the founder of Spanx. We're kind of friends. I want to get on her radar. I'm about to run that 100-mile race. I just told everybody about a minute ago. I call up her assistant, Lisa. This is Jesse Itzler. I'm going to run this 100-mile race, and I will run the entire 100 miles in Spanx, women's underwear, for a testimonial or donation from Sarah, which would have been cool, but I wanted Sarah. She puts me on hold. She goes, Sarah, some lunatic is on the phone saying he's going to go run 100 miles in Spanx. Sarah says, I think I know that lunatic. And a year later, she married the lunatic. 4 kids with the lunatic. So what happened between this guy, man, that was so scared he couldn't even pick up the phone, to this guy that's like, man, I don't even care. Whatever happens, I want. In between those two extremes was a whole bunch of self-doubt. And self-doubt is the #1 enemy to success. So if we can all beat up our own self-doubt, we'd all be better in every bucket of our lives. Then how the hell do you do it? That's what I want to talk to you guys about today. So a couple of years ago, I was running this race, a relay race, 24-hour relay race. I was doing it with 5 friends in San Diego. Here's the format of the race. You run a mile, you run a mile, you run a mile, I run a mile. Whatever team runs the most amount of miles in 24 hours wins the race. I'm with 5 friends. To my left is the guy that there's nobody to relay with. He's his own relay team. 285-pound black guy sitting in a chair, looking into space, pissed off. And the race is unsupported. That means they provide nothing. It's on the dirt, 1 mile, unlit parking lot in San Diego. You have to bring all your own supplies. They don't even give you water. I just sold my company to Warren Buffett. I way overdid our supplies. I had a Whole Foods truck pull up. I had a 10 companies set up a tent, 4 masseuses. Man, I went crazy. This guy, 3 items. He had 1 bottle of water, a box of crackers, and a fold-up chair. And he weighed 285 pounds. Thinking to myself, man, how in the world is the guy that weighs 285 pounds going to run for 24 hours, 100 miles? And sure enough, at mile 70 miles in, because of his weight, he broke every single bone in both of his feet. And because he only had crackers and water, taxed his body, he had kidney failure. And he was peeing blood right down his leg. And I'm like, man, we got to get this guy to a medic immediately. Race director, airlift this guy out of here and get him to a medic, to a hospital immediately. What does he do? He gets duct tape. He duct tapes his feet, picks himself out of the chair, runs another 30 miles to get to his goal of 100, and runs 1 more in case they miscount. I gotta meet him. I gotta meet him, because whatever secret sauce he has, whatever makes a guy like that tick, if I could teach that to my kids, to my employees, to myself, every bucket of my life would be better. So I cold call him. First I Google him. I learned he's a Navy SEAL. Navy SEAL, 2 seconds of background, black guy, grew up in Brazil, Indiana, 30 miles from where the Klan was headquartered. So as a kid, he got ridiculed and bullied, ballooned up to 300 pounds, lost all his self-esteem, joins the military, drops out. Decides one day that he hates the way his life's going, decides to become a Navy SEAL, shreds all the weight, becomes a SEAL, loses 6 friends in a helicopter crash, decides that he wants his brownie to be different and raise money for the kids of the fallen soldiers. So he Googles the 10 hardest things in the world to do, and he becomes one of the best endurance athletes on the planet. He breaks the Guinness Book of World Records for most pull-ups. He does 4,030 in a day. I think we have a slide we can show. He goes from this guy to this guy.
David Goggins, baby.
So I cold call him. I get him on the phone. He says, I'll give you 15 minutes if you come meet me tomorrow. So I fly from New York to San Diego where he lives, and I'm sitting in our lunch meeting, and 5 minutes into the lunch meeting, I realize, man, I'm never getting the secret sauce over lunch. And I just looked at him. I said, you know what? Out of nowhere, would you come live with myself and my family for a month? Him. He looks at me. I apologize for the language, but this is what he said. He looks at me and he goes, if you're crazy enough to ask a guy like me to come live with you, motherfucker, I'm crazy enough to come.
Oh,
3 days later, he's at my breakfast table. So my wife's like, how'd the lunch meeting go? I'm like, it was good. He comes to meet with Josh. She's like, what? I'm like, he's coming to with us. He's coming to live with us, sweetie, on Friday. What? Friday comes. Now, at this point in my life, I'm in a great spot. Married, still am. I had 1 child. I now have 4. But like everybody in this room, I was in a routine. And my routine was get up, work out hard, go to work hard, come home, dinner, put my son down, spend some time with my wife, and repeat. And routines are great, but routines can also be a rut. You can't get better doing the same thing every single day. And I thought I was operating at a high level, man. Sold a couple of companies, You know, ran this big race, everything is great. But I was so comfortable in my routine, I was going through life like this. Who in the world wants to go through life like this? Man, I want to go through life like this. I want to keep learning and growing and experiencing and climbing and soaring and seeing what I'm capable of doing. I want to be the 80% version of me. I got one life. I don't want to go through it like this. But I was so comfortable, man, staying here, I couldn't get out of it. Our deal was to mix it up, mix up my routine, get me out of my routine. He said, you got to do everything I say or I'm leaving. Roger that. Friday comes. He comes to my house, he's got a little Huck Finn knapsack. I'm like, what? If I'm going away for 30 days in the middle of winter in New York, I'm checking 3 bags. I came to Vegas, I'm here for 8 hours, I checked the bag. He's got this like little thing. So I made a little mental note of simplicity. Come back to that in a minute. He comes into my house, I call him Seal. I said, Seal, man, make yourself at home. My home is your home. He goes, nah, I don't have a home. I said, no, make yourself at home, that's just an expression. He comes over to me nose to nose and he goes, I don't operate in expressions. It's gonna be a great 30 days. He says, get your stuff on, I wanna go to the gym so we can see how strong you are so I can map out the month. So we go down to the gym, we go to the pull-up bar. He goes, let me see how many pull-ups you can do. So I get up on the bar and I get 8 pull-ups. It's an exaggeration. Actually, flat out a lot. 5 pull-ups. I get 4 pull-ups, I drop down, he goes, all right, wait 30 seconds, do it again. So I wait 30 seconds, get on the bar, I get 2 or 3 pull-ups, I drop down, he goes, wait 30 seconds, do it again. I get to the bar, I barely get 1 pull-up, I drop down, I'm maxed out, I go, okay, what's next? He goes, what's next is, we're not leaving here until you do 100 more. Maybe in SEAL land that's possible. But I'm like, man, that's impossible. And he said, you know what, Jesse, I already know what your biggest problem is. What our biggest problem is. The limitations that we put on ourselves are self-imposed. The limitations that you put on yourselves are self-imposed. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. Get on the bar and give me another pull-up, man. So I get back to the pull-up bar and I get a pull-up and I drop down. He goes, when you're ready, do it again. And I repeat that process for about 2 hours until I get my 100 pull-ups. And I said to myself in that moment, if I'm under-indexing by 100 pull-ups, if I'm leaving 100 pull-ups on the table in this little exercise, man, what other areas of my life am I under-indexing in? Like, if my sales quote at Marquis Jet is 20 jet cards, if I'm like, guys, put me down for 20, is that because I know I can get it? Or should I be like, man, put me down for 40? Let me get creative. Put a little pressure on me. Let me figure out a way to get more sales. Stop living so cozy, Jesse. He had a rule called the 40% rule. And the 40% rule is this. When your brain says you're done, you're only at 40%. When your brain says you're done, he told me you're only at 40%. Because it's a scientific fact. The way our brains are wired, the first time we experience pain or discomfort on any level, it doesn't have to be physical. I couldn't even call a girl. Your brain sends a signal as a defense mechanism and taps you on the shoulder and says, stop. It doesn't want you to be in pain or humiliation. When you avoid the tap on the shoulder and you keep going to get to your goal, that's the difference between heroic success and just being like everybody else. Period. Now you could call it grit, you could call it resilience, you could call it mental toughness. I don't care what you call it. We all have it. But we all are born with some kind of baseline of grit. Grit, by the way, is the #1 indicator of future success. It's the anti-self-doubt. Okay? And the way that you build up grit is by doing things that you don't want to do. Staying late when everyone's at happy hour and you're making the calls. That's building your grit muscle. When you're in traffic and everyone's going crazy and you're calm, you're building the patience part of your grit muscle. And we're all born with the baseline of it. From a 0 to 1 to 10, he might be a 9, I might be a 3. When you consistently do things that make you uncomfortable, you can take your baseline from a 3 to a 4 to a 5, and it never goes back down as long as you exercise the muscle. Now, obviously, everybody here is not going to hire a Navy SEAL to become a little bit more gritty, but you don't have to. There's a famous quote that I love. You can write this one down. How you do anything is how you do everything, man. It's the small things that you do every single day. The little decisions that you do every day, they're an indication of what you're becoming. A finisher, a closer, someone that backs away when things get challenging. How you do anything is how you do everything. Let me give you an example. The other day I was with my son, we're playing a game, and I'm spraying my son down with the hose. I'm getting him all wet. And my wife's like, sweetie, dinner time. And I drop the hose. And I'm like, man, I'll just clean that up tomorrow. It's just a hose. And I start walking in, and I caught myself. I'm like, that's not just a hose. That's an indication of what I'm becoming. Lazy. It's okay to not finish what you start. Somebody else will do it for me. I can put it off to tomorrow. That's not just a hose. And there's a lot of those decisions every single day. Man, that's the difference. It's creating winning habits, winning routines, and a winning mindset through the little decisions. So I wrote a book about our journey called Living with the Seal. You read it, great. If not, I wanted to share a couple of immediate, actionable takeaways that everybody in this room can do to get better immediately in all buckets of your life, all right? The first thing is, when Seal came into my life, he was super disciplined. We're all disciplined in our own ways, but we all struggle with discipline on some level, right? So I wrote a contract with myself. If you don't have a contract with yourself, it's a super powerful thing to do. It's a 5-minute investment. And it's a list of all my non-negotiables. I'm not going to read it to you, but I want to give you the last 2 words of the contract with myself. The last 2 words of my contract with myself completely changed my life. And those words are, remember tomorrow. When you have a split-second decision to make, big or small, remember how that decision is going to make you feel tomorrow. You want to drop out of the marathon at mile 18? Cool. Until tomorrow. You want to come to the big party tonight after, man, we're at Elvis's hotel and drink tequila, take your shirt off and be the life of the party? Amazing. Until tomorrow. You want a great litmus test for making decisions? You want a great test for making split-second good decisions? Remember how that decision is going to make you feel tomorrow. The second thing along those lines is, how many people in here have a personal mission statement? Nice, not bad, 12. What's the first thing every business does in America? They write a mission statement because it gives them permission to say no. It defines what's important to them, right? In my life, I have 4 buckets. I have my wellness bucket, my business bucket, my family bucket, and other things that are important to me. And if it doesn't fit in one of those 4 buckets, I'm not doing it, man. Because I'm not in the first chapter of my life anymore. I got to do things that move the needle and the things that I want to do. The second thing, when Seal came into my life, people are like, oh, that's really cool, but I would never have enough time for that. Time is the #1 excuse that everybody uses. It's so lame. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's just how do we decide to use them? So I made a very simple pie chart. Okay, a third grader could do this. I said there's 24 hours in a day. Here they are. I need to sleep 7 of them. Okay, you might need 6. Your pie chart might be different than mine. I take 3 hours a day for myself. I call it the 3-hour rule. It's the greatest investment I've ever made. I've been doing it since I'm 21 years old. And I know what you're going to say, 3 hours. Oh, well, you have a team of nannies. And no, I don't. No, I don't. I have the same responsibilities everybody here has, man. 40 hours a week with my kids. Full time. All right? But I don't want to resent my wife, my boss, my kids for taking away the things that I love to do. So those 3 hours are cumulative. I might be a run in the morning, sit on the couch, read, whatever. But when I'm in my time, I'm not guilty that I'm not with my wife or not at work or not with my kids. And then when I'm at work, I'm much better on where my feet are. Because I've already done the things that are important to me. Right? If you can't take 10% of your day for yourself, your life model's broken. Period. Number 3, I'm a big believer in bucket lists. This is a bucket list. I'm in Vegas talking to you guys. This is amazing. But I'm a much bigger believer in dropping the B in bucket and adding an F. creating an bucket list. And those are the things that you always wanted to do, but it wasn't the right time. You didn't have enough experience, or you were scared because that wall was there. But those are the things that require preparation, hard work, research, maybe failure. But those are the things that make you feel most alive. Those are the things, and as an adult, it's really hard, man, to create newness. You gotta work on it to create newness. There's an old Japanese ritual called the misogi. And the notion around the misogi is you do one thing so hard, one time a year, that the benefit lasts the entire other 364 days of the year. As we slide into 2019, what's the one thing that you guys are going to do that's going to define 2019? Like, if everything else didn't work, how are you going to remember 2019? Don't just flip the calendars. How are you going to do it? So I have a famous quote. I want to leave you guys with two things, and we'll do some questions and answers. I have a famous quote that I look at every single day. It's on my wall when I wake up. You can't miss it. And that quote is, I didn't come this far to only come this far. Nobody in this room came this far to only come this far. You wouldn't be here if that was the case. The average American lives to be 78 years old. I just turned 50. That means if I'm average, I got 27 summers left. And man, I love summers. And I can't do in my 70s or maybe my 80s the stuff that I love to do now. I just climbed the summit of Mount Washington. There were no 70-year-olds when I got to the summit. That window to do stuff shrinks. The one thing I would say to everybody here, no matter what it is that you want to do in 2019, no matter what your goals are in business, no matter what your family goals are, start the process. I don't care if you have it figured out. Get your foot in the door and figure it out as you go, but start the process. Because if you don't, someone else is going to beat you to it. And if you don't, you're going to wake up in routine. And you're going to be 78. And you're going to be like, man, I wish I did it then. But you know that's what the movie looks like. So put something big on your calendar, man. We didn't come this far to only come this far. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions. I think we have a couple of minutes, but it's up to you. A couple of minutes, is that cool? You guys want to do a couple little Q&A? Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Nothing's off limits, but if anybody has any questions or about my journey or my process, let me know. Yes, sir. I never took a business class. My father owned the plumbing supply house. I had no mentors. I just said to myself, what would you want to hear? And this is my style. This is why I sold a ton of jet cards at Marquis Jet, and I knew the least about airplanes. I don't even think I knew the pricing. If I walked into a meeting and someone had a running watch on, I knew I had the sale. Because I would just talk, say, oh, you like to run marathons or something, and let them talk for 29 minutes about all the races they did or whatever, and be like, that's amazing. And be like, you're my kind of guy, I'm a runner. I want to talk to you about my jet core or whatever. And they'd be like, I'm in. Let them talk. That was my thing, man. And that's honestly, I would let the other people talk, repeat back. I mean, it was just obvious. And it worked. The other thing I would say is I always focused on the product. I was obsessed with customer service and obsessed with the product. I had a company called Sheets. I started with LeBron James. We were 50-50 partners. They were oral dissolvable strips that you put on your tongue, like it was like a Red Bull mixed in a Listerine strip. And at that time, 5-Hour Energy was selling 10 million bottles a week of 5-Hour Energy. And I'm like, this is the hottest category. And we had these energy strips. And I had all these amazing celebrities. And because we had all these celebrities involved, and LeBron and this and that, we got in 40,000 stores for launch. There's never been a consumer product at launch, unless they were owned by a major company, that was in 40,000 stores. In the first week of sales, sales were through the roof, because we had all these commercials on LeBron and this and that. Second week, through the roof, I'm doubling down. I'm putting $8 million of ad money in. I mean, I went nuts. Third week, because celebrity and marketing can drive sales once. But if the product isn't great, and the story isn't there, it's never gonna work. So I obsessed. I didn't have to be a good salesman. I had a great product, and I had serviced the hell out of my customers, and they were my referrals. Yes, sir, in the back.
Where did you start?
What's that?
Where did you start?
Where do I start as far as what? Start with my own inner work, man. I think the foundation starts with, like, to me, success isn't being great at one thing or being great at making money. It starts with having the other pieces clicking. And that's where I invest a lot of time in myself. Taking time for myself, time for my family, you know, personal development, relationships, and that's where I started. And that's always, there's a lot of work that happened with me before I came into the business world. And it's really helped me. I still work on it. The other thing I would say is, like, I don't really believe in traditional resumes. I believe in life resumes. So I'm a big believer in creating experiences, and the best place to learn, all real growth comes from stepping into the unknown. That's where growth comes from. And again, as an adult, it's really hard to create newness. You have to work on it. You know, you have to schedule something. That's what I'm saying. What's the one big thing? Put something on your calendar. It'll force you to say no to the stuff that you don't want to do and focus on your one big goal. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So the question was, with all your success and your wife's success, what is your why? I don't know. I mean, that's a really difficult question. I just like to do things that make me feel fulfilled. That's usually helping people. I enjoy this. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy speaking. But my why is really just focused around, like, how can I, it's going to sound so ridiculous, but when I'm done, how do I make people feel? How can I leave the world better? That kind of stuff. So, my wife and I joined the Giving Pledge, so we're giving, you know, the majority of our money away. Yes. So the question is, like, between this period where I had all this self-doubt to where I was like, man, I don't really care, I gotta go after my wife, you know, what were the kind of the hacks or systems or process to get past that? There were a series of events in my life where I came face to face with that wall, where I walked away from it and I really regretted it. And then there were times in my life where I was like, I'm gonna go through the wall, and I loved the feeling on the other side. And it became super addicting. And I have muscle memory. So over time, the more I kind of addressing fear and running into the fire instead of away from the fire, it built up. And that's really what happened. And now, like, I always recognize that the biggest moments in my life have been the scariest. They've been the scariest. This afternoon, I was at an event. There were 35,000 people in Miami. I spoke to 35,000 people. I was so nervous for like 2 weeks, and I went through the same process. I'm like, Jesse, this is the pressure you always talk about. Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about, and I got through it, and it ended up being an amazing thing for me. So that's the kind of thing. It's just a realization of what's on the other side. Yes.
Jesse, your antique brownies. Did you do any investments with those?
Say it again.
Any investment with antique brownies?
No.
Do you have any samples? Just curious.
No, but I'm sure we could take a ride and find something. We're in Vegas, man. We can get anything here.
Just ask.
Any more?
Yep. Was being entrepreneurial-minded, I know that there are a lot of people now, a lot of opportunities, and one where I take on maybe too much. Being an entrepreneur, how do you decide which direction to take?
Yeah, so how do I decide which direction to go and what to take as an entrepreneur? So I used to be a massive multitasker and be all over. I'm highly ADD. And I just, highly. I went and I lived on a monastery for 15 days recently, about a year ago. And one of the lessons that I learned there, I went for 15 days with 8 monks that have been there for 50 years. I mean, it was insane. That's a whole other hour conversation. But I just remember this story. When I was there, they had a retreat and they had 500 dishes. I was like a pledge. They made me clean all the dishes. And I'm cleaning the dishes and they kept bringing out more dishes. And I said to the main monk, I'm like, how am I going to clean all these dishes? And he said to me, you don't have all these dishes. You only have the dish that's in your hand. So, I don't know if that answers the question, but it's a cool story. Thank you guys. Hey guys, did he do a great job or what? Awesome. Yeah, I don't think you know what he had to get through today. I mean, he was, you know, all day today, speaking in front of 35,000 people, immediately left that event, hopped on a plane from Miami, flew all the way here. I got him off the plane, he ran here, barely had time to use the restroom, and talked to us, and he's leaving first thing tomorrow morning because he's going back for the Super Bowl. And so he went through a lot, guys, to get here. So again, give him another round of applause.